Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله. أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله. حي على الصلاة. حي على الصلاة. حي على الفلاح. حي على الفلاح. الله أكبر، الله أكبر. لا إله إلا الله.
أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله أما بعد فأعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قال الله تعالى في القرآن الحكيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الله نور السماوات والأرض مثل نوره كمشكاة فيها مصباح المصباح في زجاجة الزجاجة كأنها كوكب دري يوقد من شجرة مباركة زيتونة لا شرقية ولا غربية يكاد زيتها يضيء ولو لم تمسسه نار نور على نور يهدي الله لنوره من يشاء ويضرب الله الأمثال للناس والله بكل شيء عليم صدق الله العظيم. The verse which I've recited here is in a chapter of the Holy Quran called An-Nur, or the Light, chapter 24. And this translates as follows: Allah is the light of the heavens and the earth. A likeness of his light is as a pillar on which is a lamp. The lamp is in a glass. The glass is, as it were, a brightly shining star, lit from a blessed olive tree, neither eastern nor western, whose oil gives light, even though fire does not touch it. Light upon light. Allah guides to his light whom he pleases, and Allah sets forth parables for mankind, and Allah is knower of all things. The topic of this khutbah is prompted by the Hindu festival of Diwali, and hence I've entitled it God's Light in the Holy Quran and the Festival of Diwali. The third day of Diwali, the whole festival being 5 days, the third and most important day is tomorrow, the 14th of November 2020. And this is when the goddess Lakshmi is worshipped by the devotees. I've collected a few basic facts from research sources, independent research sources, and from Hindu sources about Diwali. And these briefly are as follows. Diwali means a row of lights, and indeed, illumination forms its main attraction. Every home, lowly or mighty, the hut of the poor or the mansion of the rich, is lit with the orange glow of twinkling diyas, which are small earthen lamps, to welcome Lakshmi, goddess of wealth and prosperity. This is a widely available statement in various Hindu sources. Then, according to the Oxford Dictionary of World Religions, Diwali is celebrated by all Hindus, but is the most important festival for merchants, bankers, and businessmen because the main religious event is the worship of Lakshmi, the goddess of wealth in Hindu mythology. Then, according to the National Geographic Society of the USA, who have that well known TV channel as well, according to them, people open their doors, people open their doors and windows and light lamps to invite Lakshmi in. Then, according to the Forbes Business magazine, which is an internationally known magazine for business, and I quote it here, it had an article about Diwali, and it says several key Diwali traditions are centered around money. It is considered a particularly auspicious time to acquire new assets and make new investments. And lastly, I will quote from the Brahmin Society of North London, who say about Diwali, the houses and their surroundings are illuminated with oil lamps so that Lakshmi can see her way clearly. On this day of Lakshmi worship, Indian merchants and bankers open their new account books. And after ending the financial year, they offer worship to Lakshmi. So, having said that, I will now continue with the next verses of the Holy Quran from the one which I recited, and I'll only read it in translation. Having said in verse 35, chapter 24, verse 35, that Allah is the light of the heavens and the earth, and then going through various qualities of that light. In the next verses, it continues as follows: that light is in houses which Allah has permitted to be exalted, and His name to be remembered within them. In those houses, people glorify Him in the mornings and in the evenings, and these are men whom neither merchandise nor selling diverts from the remembrance of Allah and the keeping up of prayer and the giving of the due charity. The word is zakat. They fear a day in which the hearts and the eyes will turn about, and Allah may give them the best reward for what they did and give them more out of His grace, and Allah provides without measure for whom He pleases. Verses 36 to 38 of chapter 24. Now, the three key points of Diwali are: number one, its association with light. Number two, people's homes into which God is invited and enters. And the third key point, wealth and its acquisition and its accounting. These three key points of Diwali, these are found in this entire passage of the Holy Quran, chapter 24, verses 35 to 38. And I'll go through those points now. Verse 35 begins by indicating the importance of light. It begins, Allah is the light of the heavens and the earth. Allah nuru samawati wal ard. It doesn't say Allah is the creator or maker of light, but that Allah is the light. When someone is very closely associated with some quality or some work which they have done, or they are very prominent in that field, that person becomes known by the name of that quality. You call them Mr. So and so. Only a bad example is occurring to me at the moment. Uh, a corrupt person may be called Mr. 10%, for example, but that's an example of badness. But a person is so closely associated with something that he becomes known by its name. So it says Allah is the light of the heavens and the earth, even though Allah cannot be a part of his creation. And this is a feature in languages, in Arabic, in English as well. So to stress the importance of light, Allah himself is called the light of the heavens and the earth. And that God is no God who cannot provide light. He has given us physical light with which we see the heavens and the earth. He has given us intellectual light with which we understand the operation of the heavens and the earth using the intellectual light. And he has also given mankind spiritual light in the form of his guidance through the prophets, by which we see through that spiritual light, first of all, what should be our relation with God, and then how we should behave towards the people and the things of this world. So that also is Nurus Samawati wal Ardh, that spiritual light telling us of our relation with God and our relation with the things of this world. And it's this last form of light, the spiritual light, which is the chief subject that the Holy Quran throughout deals with. So here the Holy Quran teaches that it is God who gives light. God is the one who gives light, and human beings receive light. They are the recipients, they are the receivers, they receive light from him. And the light of God is described here in the Holy Quran, in these verses, as being light from a lamp placed at a high place. Although Maulana Muhammad has translated this in English as on a pillar, but almost all of the translators translate it as a niche. A niche is a little recess, like a window, called tak in Urdu, in which people used to keep lamps. But Maulana Muhammad Ali Sahib has given an authority for translating a mishkat as being pillar. Allah nuru samawati wal ardh masla nurihi ka mishkatin fiha misbah. Is a pillar. That his likeness of his light is as a pillar, a mishkat, on which is a lamp, misbah. So it's a light from a lamp placed at a high place, shining like a star. So that just this one light can reach everywhere and reach everyone. It is able to do that. And this flame of light of God is protected within a glass enclosure. It says that that lamp is in a glass. Al-Misbahu fi Zujaja. And it's protected within a glass enclosure. In other words, the teachings of Islam sent by God are protected from being extinguished, because that light is protected within a clear glass enclosure. Now, light needs fuel to show itself. And the fuel of this light of God comes from, it says, a blessed olive tree, neither eastern nor western, It is like a brightly shining star. Yuqadu min shajaratin mubarakatin zaytunatin la shirkiyatin wala gharbiyya. That it is lit from a blessed olive tree. Its oil comes from a blessed olive tree, neither eastern nor western. Now, in past times, in ancient times, lamps used to be lit using oil. And this wasn't what's now called kerosene or petroleum. It was oil from trees. And olive oil was widely used for lamps to burn to produce light because it doesn't produce smoke. So this is why the Holy Quran here says that from a blessed olive tree, neither eastern nor western, and the oil part I'll come to in a moment. Now, in a well-known short chapter of the Quran, which is chapter 95, Islam is likened to the olive or zaytun. People are familiar with that chapter, most people. Wattine wa zaytune. And by zaytun, there are olive is meant the religion of Islam. The olive is a symbol of peace from ancient times among many nations, fairly universally. And so this mentioning this blessed olive tree, which is lighting this light, it means that the teachings of Islam are based on peace. And the words neither Eastern nor Western indicate that Islam is not exclusively associated with either the East or with the West, but is meant for all mankind. Now, the Christian religion, although it originated in the Middle East, not far from where Islam originated, but soon afterwards it moved to the West and became a Western-based religion, and it received its development in the West as well. And on the other hand, religions of the world to the east, in countries to the east of Arabia, they remained associated with the East. Religions such as predominantly Hinduism and Buddhism. But Islam here, it says, if we interpret it this way, is neither Eastern nor Western. In other words, it's meant for all mankind. Now, it is added here that this oil or fuel gives light even without being ignited. If I may read it again, that lit from a blessed olive tree, neither Eastern nor Western, whose oil gives light even though fire does not touch it. So you don't need to strike a match or anything like that to light this oil. Now, all forms of generating light involve the process of burning something. And heat, therefore, is also produced as a result in a lamp. Not only light, but heat. But the fuel of the light of Allah, the fuel of the light of Allah, produces only light without any burning and without any heat. Now, usually, religion has a considerable amount of heat associated with it, in this sense, that we have fiery speeches by preachers. We have heated arguments, as they are called, heated arguments between followers of different faiths. And we also have easily inflamed and quickly outraged religious sentiments. Easily inflamed religious sentiments. So religion has become associated with heat in these senses. But Islamic teachings, we are told here, are light without any heat. And that is how they should be presented to the world as well, without involving any heat, purely light. Then the verse continues by describing this light of Allah as light upon light. Nurun ala nur. Now, scriptures that came before the Holy Quran are said in the Quran are said in the Quran itself to have contained light when they came. The Holy Quran says this about the Torah and about the Gospels. This is in chapter 5 and verses 44 and 46, that the Torah came containing light, the Anajil came containing light. So the words here, light upon light, may mean that the Quran then came after these, after the Torah and the Gospel. It then came as light upon that earlier light. Nurun ala nur. Also, these words may mean that there is no end to the light of guidance that we receive from the Quran. Whenever we receive any light from the Quran, it is not the end. It is not the end, because there is yet more light in store for us to receive in future. So that it's always Nurun ala nur, Nurun ala nur. Now the next verse, this is where I'll be reverting back to Diwali. The next verse, 36, tells us about the light which comes from God, the light which comes from God entering into houses. And that verse says, these are houses which Allah has permitted to be exalted, allowed to be exalted, and his name to be remembered in them. Now, how God enters into a house is through its dwellers, the people living in the house, bearing God in their minds. That is how God enters a house. If its inhabitants recall him in their minds. And it is such houses that in God's sight are regarded as high and lofty. So it is not buildings which are large and tall in physical size, which are regarded by Allah as being exalted, but houses in which people have the name of God in their minds. So it says, Fi buyutin azin Allahu an turfa, that the rafa, the rifat of those houses, their exaltation is due to people who live in those houses keeping the name of God in their minds. And more than just remembering his name in their minds, these occupants of houses are such people who are described here as that whom neither merchandise nor selling diverts from the remembrance of Allah and the keeping up of prayer and the giving of the due charity. So the Quran teaches here that the light of Allah enters those houses where there are people who do not put earning wealth above their duty to God and above their duty to fellow human beings. The desire to acquire wealth is legitimate. In fact, it is a necessary desire to keep this world going. The desire, the individual desire to acquire wealth. But the same God who legitimizes acquiring wealth, and he ordains it for us and bestows it upon us, the same God also teaches us to view the acquisition of wealth in the correct perspective and in the right proportion. God is one. God is one, and he does both of these things. Legitimizing wealth, legitimizing the acquisition of wealth, and teaching you to keep it in proportion. So while making money, we must keep uppermost in our minds, the remembrance of Allah. Remembrance of Allah is this: remembering his teachings of honesty, truth, and fair dealing. So these are people, he says, whom neither merchandise nor selling diverts from the remembrance of Allah. The remembrance of Allah is not just holding a bead and running your fingers on it and reciting names of Allah or some other formula. But in your transactions, in your business transactions, remembering in mind Allah's teachings of honesty, truth, and fair dealing. And while making money, they bear in mind the remembrance of Allah and their spiritual duties, it says here, that it doesn't divert them from prayer and our duties of doing good to other human beings. It doesn't divert them from prayer or zakat, it says here. La tulhim tijaratun wala bayan an zikrillahi wa iqamis salati wa ita'iz zakah. Zikrillah, keeping of prayer, and then the giving of charity. Now, regarding this last point of bearing charity in mind, there is a concept in Western capitalism, modern capitalism, which is known as social responsibility in business. Social responsibility in business. And that concept is that a business does not exist merely to make a profit, but it also has responsibilities to society which it must fulfill. This is why you find businesses, for example, donating to charities, social responsibility in business. And this concept is indicated here in the Quran, that neither trading nor buying, selling diverts these people from. And the third thing it doesn't divert them from is the giving of charity. Now, lastly, it is stated here that Allah provides without measure for whom He pleases. Wallahu yarzuqu man yasha'u bighairi hisab. Bighairi hisab. Allah provides without measure for whom He pleases. The word for measure here, as you will have noticed, is hisab, which means accounting by means of numbers and figures. Hisab. Now, as already quoted about Diwali, merchants and bankers open their new account books at Diwali. And the Quran says here that Allah provides without restricting Himself by any human accounting or measurement. There is no limit or end to the amount of material provisions that people can obtain from God by making their efforts. There is no limit to that. So this is what that indicates, that Allah provides without measure. But apart from this, there is another wealth which people can earn, another kind of wealth which cannot at all be measured by any form of accounting. And that is spiritual wealth. So, Wallahu yarzuqu man yasha'u bighairi hisab. That provision which Allah gives without hisab, without any measure, is not only material provision without any end, but also that provision which can't be measured at all, which is spiritual wealth. And the way to earn spiritual wealth is by remembering, as it says here, that they fear a day in which hearts and eyes will turn about, the day of judgment. The way to earn that spiritual wealth is by remembering that there is an account of your deeds which has its balance on an invisible sheet, on an invisible sheet. It has the account of your deeds with the balance. And that is more important than the balance of monetary profit and loss, which is recorded in a business ledger. So the way to earn that spiritual wealth is to put the account of your deeds and the balance which is on that balance sheet above what is in any kind of a business record as to the monetary profit or loss that you made. So in the end, I would say that may our Hindu friends and Hindu fellow countrymen remain safe in their celebrations of Diwali. And may God create light in their hearts, just as they light physical lamps for their celebrations, they light those for their Diwali celebrations. May Allah correspondingly create light of truth and His light in their hearts as well. So we say this prayer for our Hindu fellow beings and extend our greetings to them on their festival. Barakallahu lana wa lakum fil Quranil Azim wa nafa'ana wa iyyakum bil ayati wal zikril hakim. Innahu ta'ala jawadun karimun malakum bararur raufur rahim. Alhamdulillah, nahmadahu wa nasta'inuhu wa nastaghfiruhu wa nu'minu bihi wa natawakkalu alayhi wa na'udzu billahi min shururi anfusina wa min sayyiati a'malina. Man yahdihillahu fala mudilla lahu wa man yudlilhu fala hadiya lahu. ونشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له ونشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما صليت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد. اللهم بارك على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما باركت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد. Then may Allah exalt the status and dignity of the Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and his followers in this world in the way in which he promised Abraham and his followers that they would become a greatly respected and highly regarded and blessed nation in the world. Ameen. Allahumma ansur man nasara deena Muhammadin sallallahu alaihi wasallam wajalna minhum. Allahumma khzul man khazala deena Muhammadin sallallahu alaihi wasallam wa la tajalna minhum. That may Allah aid those who assist the religion of Muhammad to attain its glory. And may Allah make us from amongst such people. And may Allah bring to disappointment and forsake those who forsake the religion of Muhammad and bring it into disrepute and bring shame upon it. And may Allah not make us among such people. ربنا ظلمنا أنفسنا وإن لم تغفر لنا وترحمنا لنكونن من الخاسرين. That, oh Allah, we've wronged our souls, and if you do not forgive us and have mercy on us, then we would be very great losers. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. Oh Allah, grant us good of this world and good in the hereafter, and grant us both the physical light and physical wealth that we've been hearing about in these verses, and also the spiritual light and spiritual wealth. وَقِنَا عَذَابَ النَّارِ. And save us from the punishment of the fire which is both in this world, in our hearts, and in the next world. Ameen. رَبَّنَا تَقَبَّلْ مِنَّا إِنَّكَ أَنْتَ السَّمِيعُ الْعَلِيمُ وَتُوبْ عَلَيْنَا إِنَّكَ أَنْتَ التَّوَّابُ الرَّحِيمُ. Oh Allah, accept our prayers. You are the great hearer of prayer and the great knower of how to accept them. وَتُوبْ عَلَيْنَا إِنَّكَ أَنْتَ التَّوَّابُ الرَّحِيمُ. And turn to us mercifully. You are the one, the greatly merciful one. إن الله يأمر بالعدل والإحسان وإيتاء ذي القربى وينهى عن الفحشاء والمنكر والبغي يعظكم لعلكم تذكرون عباد الله اذكروا الله يذكركم وادعوه يستجب لكم ولذكر الله أكبر. Before starting the 2 rakats first Friday prayer, I remind you that, or I inform you rather, that after the first prayer, we'll be saying janaza prayers for a very dear and respected and devoted member of this Jamaat, Sardar Ali Sahib from Safed Dairy near Peshawar. So after the Juma prayers is finished, the Farz, we'll say his Janaza prayers. So now we'll begin the 2 rakat Juma Farz prayer.
Allahu Akbar, ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, ashhadu anna Muhammadar Rasulullah, hayya ala salah, hayya ala falah, qad qamatis salah, qad qamatis salah. Allahu Akbar, la ilaha illallah.
Allahu Akbar. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim Maliki Yawmiddin Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in Ihdinas siratal mustaqim Siratal lazina an'amta alayhim غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين
Ameen.
لله ما في السماوات وما في الأرض وإن تبدوا ما في أنفسكم وتخفوه يحاسبكم به الله فيغفر لمن يشاء ويعذب من يشاء والله على كل شيء قدير آمن الرسول بما أنزل إليه من ربه والمؤمنون كلنا آمن بالله وملائكته وكتبه ورسوله لا نفرق بين أحد من رسله وقالوا سمعنا وأطعنا غفرانك ربنا وإليك المصير. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده
ربنا ولك الحمد.
حمدا كثيرا طيبا. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. لا يكلف الله نفسا إلا وسعها لها ما كسبت ولها ما اكتسبت ربنا لا تؤاخذنا إن نسينا وأخطأنا ربنا ولا تحمل علينا إصرا كما حملته على الذين من قبلنا ربنا ولا تحملنا ما لا طاقة لنا به واعف عنا واغفر لنا وارحمنا أنت مولانا فانصرنا على القوم الكافرين.
آمين.
الله أكبر. سمع الله ولمن حمده
ربنا ولك الحمد.
حمدا كثيرا طيبا مباركا. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. التحيات. أشهد أن لا اللهم صل على رب جلنی. السلام علیکم ورحمۃ اللہ. السلام علیکم ورحمۃ اللہ. اللہم انت السلام و منک السلام تبارک ربنا و تعالی یا ذا الجلال والاکرام. استغفر اللہ ربی من کل ذنب و اتوب الیہ. رب اغفر وارحم وانت خیر الراحمین. یا حی و یا قیوم و برحمتک استغیث و برحمتک یا رب العالمین. I had met Sardar Ali Saab a number of times in the 1990s in Pakistan, and he was a very devoted and loyal member of our Jamaat and very hardworking as well. So it is a loss to our Jamaat, and I'm also personally sad to hear of his passing away, which in fact took place last Friday. But the information was slightly too late for us to say his janazah prayer last Friday. And as you must all know by now, the janazah prayer is said in the standing posture throughout, and there are 4 takbeers. After the first Allahu Akbar, you start as in the normal prayer up to the end of Surat Fatiha. After the second takbeer, we say Durood, all silently, the Imam and you silently. After the third takbeer, we say a prayer for the deceased and for the living and forgiveness of all of those. And you can say the set prayer in Arabic. But if you don't know that, then you can say a prayer in any language for the same purpose. And after the 4th takbir, then we say salam, and that's the end of the prayer. So I'll start now. Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar. Allahumma salli ala. Allahumma barik ala Muhammad. Allahu Akbar. Allahumma ighfir li hayyina wa mayyitina wa shahidina wa ghaibina wa saghirina. Allahu Akbar. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. That is then the end of the Friday broadcast and the Janaza prayer that we just said. So thank you very much for joining, and I hope that we all learned something from the khutbah, and I pray that we're able to join again next Friday. So Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu, and thank you.
Jazakallah.